I think it's just going to get weirder and weirder and weirder, and finally it's going to be so weird that people are going to have to talk about how weird it is. Eventually people are going to say, what the hell is going on? It's not enough to say it's nuts. You have to explain why it's so nuts. The invention of artificial life, the cloning of human beings, possible contact with extraterrestrials, the systems which are in place to keep the world sane are utterly inadequate to the forces that have been unleashed.
Welcome back to Forbidden Knowledge News. I'm your host, Chris Matthew. Today my guest is William Ramsey. First, be sure to check out the pre-release special edition version of Doors of Perception, available now to rent or purchase from our website. By doing so, it helps tremendously with our upcoming promotion. The film will soon be available on streaming platforms as well. We are booking guests for June. If you have suggestions or you'd like to be a guest, email me, forbiddenknowledgenews@gmail.com. Today, I want to welcome back to the show William Ramsey. He is an attorney, author, and researcher, graduate of University of California, Berkeley, with a degree in history. He has authored several books and produced several documentaries. William, welcome back. How you doing?
I'm doing well, Chris. Thanks for inviting me. Glad to be with you again.
Thanks so much for coming back on. I'm really looking forward to this. Today you have presentation on the Knights of Malta. According to our mainstream information, the Knights of Malta are officially the Sovereign Military Hospitaller Order of St. John of Jerusalem, of Rhodes, and of Malta, a Catholic lay religious order known for their historical military and chivalric traditions. And their modern focus is on humanitarian work and social assistance. All sounds pretty legit, but as we know about most of these religious organizations or secret societies, there is always much more sinister purposes and meanings behind these groups, as well as applications within our society. So I'm very much looking forward to learning about this today. Before we get into it, it's been a little while since you've been on. Remind the audience a little bit about yourself and let them know where they can find you.
Yeah, I became kind of a podcaster. My podcast is in the top 0.5% in the world, so I guess that's top 15 or 20,000. And people can find that on anywhere, Spreaker or Spotify. It's William Ramsey Investigates. I do kind of an investigative journalist show from kind of an independent perspective, and look into a lot of different subjects, true crime. I expose the occult, history, things like this. Like, this is really a history thing. This is Malta. Author of 5 books and 5 documentaries. You can find my 5 documentaries on Patreon. But this Knights of Malta, I think, is really interesting because it's seemingly this old order. This is not a order that's decades old or centuries old. It's literally millennia old. It goes all the way back to the Crusaders, so the history of the Crusaders, and to what's called the Holy Sepulchres, like one of the holiest elements in the Christian religion. And like you had that long intro about this name, it's called Jerusalem to Rhodes to Cyprus, is because they were always fighting the Muslims, and so they went to the first. They went from Jerusalem to Cyprus to Rhodes, which are 2 islands fairly close to modern day Turkey, and then they ended up in the Isle of Malta, which is south of Sicily. So that's how they got the Knights of Malta. But what's interesting is during kind of just watching the Trump administration, a lot of these people are associated with the Knights of Malta and very important figures. So one is Alina Habba is her name. Her dad is a chancellor of the American Knights of Malta. If you've seen her, she's like his lawyer. She was his lawyer during, I think, in New Jersey or New York. You've seen her on TV maybe. And then another is Eric Prince of Blackwater fame or infamy, whatever you want to call it. Also a member of the Knights of Malta. And there's other people too. So I would say it's within the more conservative, it's definitely what would be called a conservative group or right-wing group. But these are the people who are now in a right-wing group with the tie to the Middle East and really focused on the Holy Land, I guess, in Christian tradition. So I think all the stuff that's happening in the Middle East right now, there is a tie to these people and these people interested who are Knights of Malta, known and unknown. So its membership list, like you said, it's secret. It really is a secret society. It's not divulged. Some people divulge their affiliations to it. Like we know that King Charles III is a member of the Knights of Malta, but not everybody's divulged. And there's been some very famous names in 20th century history. If you see the U.S. not just as a republic, but as a almost imperial power, so many people involved in the American Empire were Knights of Malta, Dulles brothers, the Bush. We know the oldest Bush, who is, it's not George Jr. or Sr., but his dad was, I forgot his name, but he was a member of the Knights of Malta. So you see this kind of order, and there's so many people in the Knights of Malta that are from very rich, landed aristocratic families in Europe. So I think it's important to understand this group, particularly as they're surrounding Trump. There's a lot of people we know who are surrounding Trump, and you'll see like this in presentation, the history of it. And the history is really, like I said, interesting. It goes on. There was a famous battle, there was the Maltese fight against the Ottomans. They tried to take over. So a small group of knights fought and won against this kind of Islamic empire. Then Napoleon actually sacked Malta in 1798 on his way to Egypt. So they have a history of that, but they also have a big presence in Rome. And it's kind of a strange group too, because they are under the papal see, but it's independent. They're almost like an independent state. And so they can put out their own passports and things like that. So within the Christendom, maybe the US is like a mix of Catholic and Protestantism and all kinds of different Christian groups, but in some of like South America, all you have is Catholicism. That's the number one thing. So this Maltese order, international order, has much more impact and importance globally than we may see. It has 13,500 members, and they do good works. Like you said, they are involved. It's named after St. John, so John the Baptist. So they do these kind of, feeding works and getting people food and medical treatment and things like that. So there is an element to them, but one of the other elements is this kind of under the table, what could be called private diplomacy. So we have public diplomats, Secretary of State, all these other people, these ambassadors, but this is kind of a way for people internationally to talk, maybe across the table having dinner. And I think a lot of this is kind of that kind of diplomacy really does happen. And a lot of these people you'll see in these meetings who were Knights of Malta, who were involved in creating the EU. So very powerful people, and a very interesting organization with a lot of heritage. John Roberts, who was the head of the Supreme Court, is an alleged member. It hasn't been confirmed, but he's been seen going into Knights of Malta stuff. So like these are like big heavy duty players. So it's like an aspect of their kind of social status and personal power to be a member of this group, particularly if you're from a Catholic tradition.
Right. I am fascinated to learn about how much influence and power these secretive groups have over everything: politics, economics, our entertainment, our culture. These people that are being put into very important positions right now are involved with a lot of these secretive orders, like you said, and I'm very interested to see how things unfold as we go on with this administration. But where should we start with your presentation?
We can just start, because one of the things that distinguishes the Maltese group is its own particular symbol known as the Maltese cross. So you'll see that these people wearing the Maltese cross, they may not say, I'm a member of the Knights of Malta, but it's a giveaway. So if you see this Maltese cross, you'll see it on Queen Elizabeth, King Charles' mother. She wears something.
I'm going to go ahead and share the screen so people can get the visuals. If you're listening on the audio end, go ahead and check us out on Rumble. I'll be sharing this presentation that William sent me with some visuals to go along with everything. So can you see my screen there?
I do.
Okay,
so that's perfect. The Maltese cross, the red on white. You'll see that it symbolizes the 8 Beatitudes, and it's loyalty, piety, honesty, courage, honor, glory, contempt for death, solidarity towards the poor and the sick. So, it's you'll see these Maltese things around. If you keep your eye open, you'll see the colors too that permeate kind of the European tradition. The Vatican, City of London, Bank of International Settlements is red and white. It may reference back to this kind of thing. And it's also, the Knights of Malta are distinct from the Knights Templar. So the Templar Knights, of people know, like Friday the 13th was the destruction of the Templars in Europe because they had too much power. They really were one of the early kind of international banking groups, but it's different than the Knights of Malta. The Templars, either, it depends on what your version of history is, they either were destroyed in the 14th century or they went underground and kind of, maintained. But there's no public.
Did you know?
Know what?
Pink cherry.
Wait, what's pink cherry?
Oh, I know.
We know.
She knows.
He knows.
They know.
Oh, I definitely know. And we love pink cherry.
Pink Cherry, the #1 destination for sexual health and wellness. If you know, you know.
Now it's your turn. Unlock an exclusive 40% off site-wide just for you.
Only at pinkcherry.com. Use code PINK at checkout.
Go on. Now you know.
Ranked #1 in innovation 10 consecutive years, Arizona State University isn't just ahead of the curve. It's creating new paths to success. Learn from notable clinical and research faculty. Online, that's a degree better. Explore programs at asuonline.asu.edu.
Real Knights Templar group. They last about 400 years.
It seems like the extensions of these ancient groups still hold different power in their individual respects, but have different ideas of where they want society to go and may have some infighting, although they cooperate at times. Is that how you see things going?
I think there's something to be said about that. I think it's correct, but I think there's overlap. So you'll see guys who are in the Knights of Malta who are also the Knights of Columbus, another very powerful, influential Catholic Christian group. And you'll see one of the guys who was the head of the Knights of Columbus is also a Knight of Malta. You'll see him kind of in his induction ceremony in these slides, which I think is interesting. But there's also like Knights of the Holy Sepulchre. So there's these old knighthoods. And it's very important, actually, because I don't know if you've heard this 2025 agenda of Trump, supposedly, and the left's very triggered, or whatever you want to call it. They're very up in arms about the 2025 agenda. The guy who wrote the 2025 agenda and is like the head of the Heritage Foundation is a Knight of Malta. So you see this kind of, it's influencing our current culture, this involvement of the secret group. And it's not like, the interesting thing about the Knights of Malta is it's kind of quasi-secret. So there's secretive aspects, but you can go to their website and you can see their kind of like what their public face and who's the head of the Knights of Malta, guy from Canada now. But that's another aspect. I think his name was Fuchner, who's the head of like the Heritage Foundation for 50 years, is a Knight of Malta, a Knight of the Holy Sepulchre. Really interesting guy. I mean, from a conservative perspective, just his kind of resume is interesting. But I do think these were people hanging around the Vatican, right? And so like one of the things, and maybe in conspiracy culture, alternate history, is like the three triumvirates of world power are District of Columbia, City of London, and the Vatican. And I think that this is an element of that being true, the Knights of Malta.
Right. You see that with all these groups. With the right hand, they present humanitarian work and all this charities, while the left hand is involved with some very dark and dirty stuff.
They got down dark and dirty, the Knights of Malta, in a lot of American imperial stuff, overthrowing governments and anti-communist activities. So a lot of these guys really do see them as knights. And I think the other members are like, they saw themselves as valiant knights against godless communism. So I think that's real. I think that's a real element. A lot of these guys are Knights of Malta. So these are, like I was just saying before this slide, is like the colors of the white and black. And actually some Nazis are Knights of Malta, which kind of strains credulity, so to speak. But Himmler, who was the head of the SS under Hitler, was a Knight of Malta too. And he had, and that, there's kind of a secret overlap. If you remember the whole story of the rat lines, they came through a lot of Catholic kind of charities globally, right? Because Catholic really has its foot in many waters, so to speak, like huge in South America, like I said. So a lot of these Nazi criminals are people who had to run kind of came through rat lines associated with it. Himmler was involved in it for 2 years. Like before the war ended, the Germans knew that it was going to end. So they were offshoring a lot of people and funds and capital before the whole place collapsed, before Germany collapsed. And a lot of that stuff is through Himmler, who's a Knight of Malta.
It's funny you said the Catholic Church involvement. I think that there's a lot of deflection from the Catholic Church when it comes to some of these nefarious things. Everybody's pointing at Israel and the Jews when in reality, yes, there is some dirty things with that, but there seems to be extremely nefarious activities within all of these groups, and they have their tentacles intermingled with each other.
I think that the Catholic Church, the Pope at the time was very sympathetic to the Nazis and Hitler. I can't remember his name. I can't remember which Pope it was during the war. And we know the crimes of the Third Reich were just extraordinary. So it's crazy to think like they're actually sympathetic and helping some of these people get away. We don't know who all got away, but we know like Mengele got away. Bormann got away, and there's even news today of like Hitler. I don't know if you've heard the stories, but
I have.
Millet, who's become the head of Argentina, saying they're going to release all records regarding Hitler, who supposedly lived another 20 years.
Yeah,
and that the head, according to some other people who've had told the story, there's rumors about Hitler getting out forever, but the head that's supposedly in Soviet Union is the head of a woman. So there might be more to that story, but this is a list of people who are known people in the Knights of Malta. You see James Jesus Angleton, who's in the news again today. So very much involved.
Names that have come out throughout my research in all of these kind of conspiratorial realms.
Angleton is one of them. He famously said a lot of famous stuff, but the wilderness of mirrors, and that all his friends are going to hell and he'll be there soon. And he's a Knight of Malta. So he's supposedly ostensibly a Christian group, and he's involved in all kinds of subterfuge. And Oswald and all the stuff is coming out in this JFK file. So that's one name. Some of these names are foreign because we don't know, like it's hard as an American, you may not know some of these other ancestral powerful groups or families, but like the Borghese is a big Italian nobility family. Bonaparte is actually...
At Arizona State University, we're bringing world-class education from our globally acclaimed faculty to you. Ranked #1 in innovation for 10 consecutive years and #2 among public universities for employability. ASU isn't just ahead of the curve, it's creating new paths to success. Earn your degree from the nation's most innovative university. Online, that's a degree better. Explore more than 300 undergraduate, graduate, and certificate programs at asuonline.asu.edu. Ranked #1 in innovation 10 consecutive years, Arizona State University isn't just ahead of the curve, it's creating new paths to success. Learn from notable clinical and research faculty. Online, that's a degree better. Explore programs at asuonline.asu.edu.
I think the grandson of Napoleon, believe it or not. But some that will be familiar. If you remember Pat Buchanan, he's kind of like a stalwart on the right. Same with William Buckley. Prescott Bush, that's the name. I forgot his first name. So the grandfather of George Senior and George Herbert Walker and George Jr., both presidents, right? Very powerful people. One was the head of the CIA. Casey, head of the CIA. Capra, who was really a pro-American filmmaker who made It's a Wonderful Life, but also was involved in World War II propaganda, pro-American information propaganda. That's kind of where he got his start, is my understanding. Coughlin was a big, I think, Jesuit priest in the U.S., very influential. Wild Bill Donovan, Alan Dulles, Avery Dulles. Yeah, Clay Shaw. He's rumored to. Clay Shaw has a very interesting history. I know that you're from Louisiana, but I'll send you this article on Clay Shaw that goes through his World War II history.
My producer, Corey Hughes, who's I think you've had on your show.
Of course.
He has filled me in with a lot of that information. It's fascinating.
It really is. He was a really interesting guy, but he was like an adjutant or a sidekick in World War II for a very well-known general whose name escapes me right now. But he was given like honorary badges of merit from France and things like that for his involvement in war. And what you see is like post-war is a lot of these guys, Knights of Malta included, they all fused their kind of personalities in wars. They all had this kind of fraternal brotherhood from the war. And you see that through the CIA and all this stuff. Like almost all of them were in World War II, including Shah, who turned out to be like their story. I think it came out that he was an asset and a friend. He doesn't look like it on the surface, but I think that he really was. It's such this huge tapestry of the Knights of Malta. It's fascinating when you see the growth of it. Luz, who's the head of Time Life, all this stuff. This is the chart, and you see how curious this organization is, because it is not under the Supreme Pontiff. It's the sovereign military, or there's a Grand Master, there's a council, and then all these sub things, but it's kind of like underneath the Supreme Pontiff. I have like a little thing I can read about it. They have some kind of thing. The order maintained its status through diplomatic recognition from various states and its unique relationship with the Holy See. In Rome, the order's headquarters became the magisterial palace, enjoying extraterritorial status granted by Italy. This arrangement underscores the order's continued recognition as a sovereign entity in international law. Even without a territory, it can issue passports. It has diplomatic relations with over 100 countries, and they have observer status at the United Nations. So it's very curious. This is the original charter. So this is the charter by Emperor Charles V, and it's the grant of these 3 islands. Really, they called it the Maltese Isle of Malta, but it's really 3 islands right there, kind of in between. Excuse me, south of Sicily and north of kind of, I guess it would be Tunisia. Mm-hmm. And this, you see this like distinctive red, blue, red and white motif, the Maltese cross, and this is kind of one of their meeting groups. I think it's called the Grand Master's Palace. They have a beautiful church in Malta. So if anybody's ever in Malta, go check out their church. We'll see the interior pictures. It's almost never seen in Western media for some odd reason. So I think some people may not want the full truth, but this is like really one of the most powerful people in the world. Is formerly was Queen Elizabeth with a very distinctive Maltese cross. So they do have females, and they're known as dames in the Knights of Malta. So they have this kind of status in there. Yeah. And it's interesting that next pick is infamous spy Ghislaine Maxwell with the ambassador to Malta. Oh, right. So yeah. And then that's this guy who was the head of South Africa is Knight of Malta. He's wearing his Maltese cross, right? So some of these people, like, it's really interesting. Some of these people's history and their ties to this group are quiet, and you can tell they're actually not really racist. They have like Sammy Davis Jr. is a member of the Knight of Malta. You'll see, I think, a picture of him in here with his Maltese cross. A lot of famous people, singers and stuff. But this is the kind of Malta. You see this distinctive color. I think this was a battle, or Philippe de Villiers.
Now, I'm sure we're going to get into it, but what were the primary ideologies of this organization?
I would say they really have a crusader mentality. So Christian, like they're definitely Christian. They were involved in, trying to retake the Holy Land from the the infernal Muslims. And I think they're really anti-Muslim. I think that's really it. It may not be an overt statement, but they've been constantly fighting against Muslims for 1,000 years. So I think that's it. And I would say if they're believers in Christ and God, they're also anti-communist. So I think that may be the subtextual ideology, is their loyalty to the church and loyalty to kind of crusader mentality. It is interesting. We'll see later on in some of my slides, like there was an issue of like during the Iraqi war and the involvement of a lot of people. They're very well-known journalists like Sid, I forgot his name, but like they're complaining that these guys are Knights of Malta and they're acting like crusaders, and they say stuff like that. I think the guy's name was McChrystal or some other general, and they're like, yeah, we want to replace these mosques with churches. So it really, that ideology that you mentioned, are curious about, I think it really has real. This isn't kind of some kind of LARPing thing. Like some people have called these, like the critics of the Knights of Malta, as LARPers, right? Live action role players, which may be true or not, because there's a lot of regalia and stuff. But also Christo-fascists is kind of a left-wing term, I would say. But I think maybe the fascist term is bandied around a little too much. But it's definitely like a secretive society of people who don't, they're not publicly walking around with a badge saying I'm a Knight of Malta.
Right.
So they keep it on. And you see these overlapping orders, the Anglo-American establishment. This guy Darren does great research on X. Is at Golden Nuggies, but it just shows these other orders we may not know much about overlap with the Knights of Malta, also knowing as the Circle, Les Cirque, which is really a kind of a fascist group after war, which was a lot of business leaders coming together and intelligence people, and overlapping with the Pilgrim Society, which have done a lot of stuff. So this is like the Vatican as the head, but the Pilgrim Society is the City of London, literally not the City of London big, but the central part of London is called the City of London, which is really its own entity. It has its own rules, and this Pilgrim Society comes out of that. A lot of old names too. A lot of overlapping names in the Pilgrim Society and Knights of Malta. I mentioned earlier, like some of the guys who started the EU. This is one of them, Otto von Habsburg. I think if you know maybe something about history, like the Habsburgs were big in Germany and things like that. This is one of them. So he's a Knight of Malta, but he had the idea to kind of a pan-European movement to stop, this constant war. After World War I and II, these guys are like, we need to put a stop to this thing. So the EU was seen as kind of a solution to the European wars. This is another famous person under Hitler. His name was Galen. And people know his name. He was kind of like the Eastern Intel. This guy's friends with Alan Dulles through the Knights of Malta, right? So that's their kind of nefarious. These are supposed to be people conflicting with each other. But there was the Galen network was all of these assets or intelligence assets in the Soviet Union leading up to World War II and after. And it's just like, this is one of these strange kind of things where people should be at each other's throats but aren't. And he's friends with Alan Dulles.
What's interesting to me is you were saying that they seemingly have these rooted Christian ideologies, but it seems to be intertwined with ancient occult spiritual beliefs as well, and some darker occultic practices. This seems to be something that originates from something much older than just traditional Christian beliefs, right?
I think that there's an overlap. So I don't think that, like Alan Dulles, if you look at his history, he doesn't act like a Christian at all, but he's in these Christian organizations. Same with Galen. And Himmler was the SS had really dark occult stuff. So what's Himmler doing in a Christian crusader organization? Right. So I think your point is totally valid. And the rumors of the Knights Templar, the rumor of the Templars that they brought black magic back from the Middle East. And that picture of Baphomet that everybody's seen with his hand up and down at Salvet Coagula comes from the Templars bringing that magic back to
Could it be that they're using Christianity as a shield for something much darker and older?
100%.
Yeah. 100%.
And there's traditional Catholics or they call them trad Catholics, whatever. They think that they always are worried about infiltration into the Vatican of like dark forces. Yeah. And I think it's called The Windswept House. Is a book by a Jesuit priest about that direct subject of kind of like Satanism invading and infiltrating. But this Galen guy is really remarkable, but Knight of Malta. He's wearing the Maltese cross in that picture before. I don't know if I pointed that out.
Yeah.
Really that's his central totem is that cross, that black, that red, white. So if you scroll down, this is kind of the layout of the Malta. I mentioned 3 islands earlier. So the main one is Malta, but there's 2 smaller ones. It's about 5 miles across, not very big. But it's always been like they fought over in World War II, like the Germans bombed it. It's very beautiful, Mediterranean. Beautiful. You can see the water. Yeah. But this one, this St. John's Cathedral in Valletta, which is the main city, has 400 tombstones of knights and officers of the Order of St. John of Jerusalem. Each tombstone is inlaid by a colored marble slab bearing crest, coat of arms, and epitaph of buried knights. So these are kind of the knights. Like, this is a literal knighthood. Like, it's not, I mean, it's from the past, but these people really are like knights, like Christian knights. And they're very well, people who can't see this live, I mean, they're really ornate. People who put time and effort, and clearly like precious stones or things like that are in this. And you'll see the skull and crossbones.
Wow, that is incredible.
Yeah, one of the interesting things is the skull and crossbones may come from the Knights of Malta, who were accused of piracy because they were an island kind of group of knights, and they were always trying to subvert kind of, Muslim shipping and stuff like that. So you'll see this skull and crossbones. So there's an argument. So talking about maybe not exactly adhering to Christian values, if they're involved in piracy, there's all kinds of, stealing money, enslaving people, things like that. But yeah, it's beautiful. It's a beautiful ornate church, and it has a Caravaggio in it, which is one of the great Renaissance painters, and we'll see that if you go down that one more. Yeah, that's it. So that's the Caravaggio. That's the beheading of St. John the Baptist, a depiction of it, and you'll see these very prominent Maltese crosses right there. That's really, that painting is priceless. I don't think there's a cost on it. It's called The Beheading of John the Baptist. And that's a depiction of an old Knight of Malta from, I think, the 16th or 17th century. I forgot. I think the artist was Titian. But you'll see him pointing to the Knight of the Cross, and he has that medallion around his chest. So that's what they looked like back in the day. And there's Sammy Davis Jr. He's got his prominent Knight of Malta cape on. They all have these capes and stuff. So he's a really fascinating guy. They integrated the Knight of Malta kind of symbolism in this one. I can't remember what her name is. It's like a sci-fi zombie movie or whatever.
I think I know what you're talking about. It's right on the tip of my tongue. But anyway, Resident Evil.
Thank you very much. Yeah, better memory than I have. If you scroll down one more, you'll see I mentioned earlier this Knight of Columbus. So you'll see Patrick E. Kelly, the Supreme Knight of the Knights of Columbus, the boss, admitted to the Order of Malta. So he's right there in the church. You see in the background the picture of St. John baptizing Christ, right? If you remember your New Testament, Christ comes to him, and St. John says, I'm the one who should be baptizing you. And Jesus says, you must baptize me to fulfill all righteousness, if you remember that. But these Knights of Columbus, this is a very powerful Catholic group in the United States. There's no question about it. And it just shows these overlapping. But the Supreme Knights of Columbus, I have a thing there. If you scroll down a little bit into the Wikipedia, they have a company, 1.9 million members in more than 15,000 councils, and operates an insurance company with over 109 billion in assets. So it's a lot of money. And you can see them. So I think these guys, the critic of them being LARPing, I don't think that's real. I don't think they think of themselves as LARPers. I think they think of themselves as very serious Christians. And this was just a painting from the 19th century, 16th or 17th century about the Knights of Malta, right? So you just see these guys with the Maltese crosses. These are knights from that era. And then the 900-year history, that's just kind of an overview of the whole order and everything. And this is the current head of the Knights of Malta. You see the prominent Maltese cross, the picture of St. John baptizing Christ. And he's making a very specific hand sign that occultists have adopted. You see Aleister Crowley make the same hand sign, but it means I am initiated. So I don't know what other initiations that this guy's had. His name's John Dunlap, but this is very prominent. And I think this is an alcove in that church in Valletta in Malta is where he's at. But he's like, I think the first Canadian. And non-royal, I think all the other heads of the Knight of Malta had to be royalty. And there was a recent kind of hubbub in the Knights of Malta. The Pope redid their charter or something like that within the last couple of years, actually. And it was interesting. They didn't like dissolve the whole place, but you just see this prominent underneath this picture of Christ is, the Maltese cross right there. You see that, right? Like right at the very central kind of thing.
Yeah.
There's also orders, like fake orders. So they're concerned about there's fake Knights of Templars, Knights Templar and Knights of Malta. So they're concerned about it in this document, mimic orders and things like that. So it's kind of interesting. And
Again,
this is just
for any of those listening on the audio, and if you want to see the visuals we have here, come over to Rumble, and there's a presentation we're putting up for you guys to see.
Yeah, I mean, these are just some of the members. You see, some of these names are familiar because they're like famous, like families in Europe. So Prince Charles, Juan Carlos I of Spain, King of Spain, Prince Charles, King Charles, very powerful person. Duke of Castro, so this is kind of like Italian royalty. Dominican order was the head, so you see these overlapping orders that are also Knights of Malta. So it's intertwined. I think that's one of the things. It's not some kind of independent group. People are Knights of Malta, Pilgrim Society, Dominicans, Jesuits. They can be the whole thing. Like imagine, and we also see ties to Steve Bannon. I don't know if you are familiar with Bannon. He's very much a right winger.
Yeah.
He was involved with a guy who's definitely a Knight of Malta. And we'll see that later in this. And he was actually in he was trying to do kind of almost like influencing operation for right wingers in Italy.
Would you say there's also a crossover to Freemasonry?
It wouldn't surprise me. It's a really good question. I didn't see a lot of like the Freemasonic stuff in this, but no, it wouldn't surprise me at all. It wouldn't surprise me.
Right on.
A lot of these guys collect these things, collect these initiations or whatever, their involvement in groups. Makes them feel important, I suppose. I mean, you're hanging out with other important people. Like if you want like a power network type thing, you'd want to join the Knights of Malta or the Pilgrim Society or whatever.
Seems to be an exceeding number of powerful individuals that are involved with some sort of secret society or magical order or some kind of ancient order that props them up in some way. And it seems like it goes across from politicians to law enforcement to anyone in higher positions of power. Most of them seem to be involved in these organizations somehow.
Imagine you're Prescott Bush and you're at Yale and you become a member of Skull and Bones. So you're doing occult rituals. Like you literally go into a tomb and are reborn and people urinate on you amongst other things and scream at you. Like you do an initiation and then you join this Christian organization. So what's going on? Like you're part of it's a master occult organization, Skull and Bones, really a dark group of people, and then Knights of Malta. So like your point of like these overlapping things, it's real. Like this is documented. Like you can go watch like the Skull and Bones initiation ritual because a guy filmed it, and it's like people in masks and dressed as kings and skulls and knives and swords, like ceremonial magic.
Oh yeah, I've seen some that are extremely elaborate to extremely cheesy and low budget, but they all seem to have this theatrical, occult, ritualistic type of events that occur.
Yeah. And I think it's kind of like what frats do and some of these other organizations is you bond through trauma or ordeals or whatever. I don't think that's an overtly stated thing in frats, but I've been in college and they do go through ordeals, at least as college students. But like, I think that's the same thing as what happens.
The whole mind control trauma thing is a deep rabbit hole with these powerful organizations as well.
Yeah, and you come out the other side. So you get reborn and you're initiated. So a lot of those guys are reborn. And what's that famous movie? It's The Good Shepherd or whatever with Matt Damon is in it.
Yeah.
About the Skull and Bones. And so you see, those are the type of guys who overlap from Skull and Bones to the Knights of Malta.
Right on.
But you have this slide up. It's a perfect example of what you're talking about. These are all the people who were into intelligence in the United States, World War II and after. Casey Dulles Donovan. Casey famously said, or infamously said, not a very nice guy. Once Americans know everything, they once we filled their, what's it? I don't remember it verbatim, but like once they think everything is false, once we've got them to everything is false, the acts of the CIA are done.
Yeah.
You ever heard that line he said? Like, it's
I
really
have.
malevolent. Yeah.
We'll look around at the state of our society now, especially with social media news and the independent media, the infiltration of everything. It seems like the powers in control couldn't compete with the independent media truth community, so they completely infiltrated the space and took it over. And now we have the mainstream alternative media, Candace Owens, Alex Jones, Tucker Carlson, that just slipped in and are trying to infiltrate everything. It's crazy.
It is totally crazy to see it happen too, because I was just kind of like a small little, it used to be like podcast was like kind of even an underground technology. Now it's just a huge industry. But Tucker Carlson, Pilgrim Society member, undisclosed. So he's operating around this kind of groups of people. And the Pilgrim Society is headed by King Charles III. In my opinion, a total influence op. We could do another show on that because it overlaps with the Knights of Malta. This is interesting. I'm almost positive this guy on the far right was the former head of the Defense Department under Trump in 2016 to 2000. I think his name is Enzer. He looks exactly like him. I couldn't confirm it, but like this is I don't know if you've been to Italy and seen like St. Peter's Square. This is in front of St. Peter's Basilica, right? Because Christ gave Simon Peter acknowledged Christ as the Messiah. And so Christ says to him, I'm going to make you the foundation of my church, right? So that's kind of the authority that the Catholic Church bases it upon, is Peter, who was then taken to Rome, right? So that's like the historical legacy. So you have St. Peter's Basilica, and that's where these guys are at, right?
Yeah.
I forgot the guy's name, Ensler or something like that. I was talking about this earlier. They dissolved the leadership and ordered a new constitution. Bergoglio did. And it just kind of goes in what they really did. But you see this kind of priory meetings, 2023, if you go farther down. It's just interesting, the regalia and the international element of the Knights of Malta is kind of my point. And then one more over, you'll see Bergoglio in the white and red, right? So he's probably a knight. That's my guess. And then the next one's kind of an overlap of the Knights of Malta and all these other groups, UN, Rockefeller family. So it's part of that kind of new NWO religion. I also put in a couple. Oh, this is the guy. If you go down one more, this is the guy I was talking about earlier who was part of this 2025 thing, His name is Ed Fulner, Heritage Foundation head. He wrote like a subtext on this 2025 document. I don't know if you've seen the document, but it's basically like 120 pages of what Trump is going to supposedly do. And the left is just apoplectic about 2025 because it's seen as anti-abortion, which is a Catholic kind of trait, totally anti-abortion. But this guy Fulner is right there, and he's a Knight of Malta. Knight of Malta, Knight of the Holy Sepulchre, too. He's got multiple knighthoods. Really interesting guy.
I don't want to get too off on a tangent, but what do you think the Trump administration represents, especially this time around with everything that's being presented? Again, like I said earlier, I think there's a right-hand presentation that is hypnotizing people, and the left hand is doing some very concerning things, rolling out the technocratic surveillance state, the PayPal mafia, the relationship with Israel, all these things that are very powerfully concerning are still unfolding as we're being presented with all these wonderful things on the surface. What do you think?
I think a lot's going on. It's a pretty heady environment, but I think you covered a lot of it. I think the technocracy or the PayPal mafia is one component. The other is paleo or arch conservatism. I think that's what that 2025 document represents. So I think that he's catering to them as well. He's trying to cater to the middle class. And I think that he's a nationalist more than a globalist. And also totally pro-Israel. Like he's either owned by Israel, they have tapes on him, or something like that. Like he's lockstep with Israel. and this threatening of Iran and stuff. He's never invaded anybody for like 400 years. Well, maybe there was the Iran war, but it's not like a country in civilizational overthrow. They supported what we call terrorist groups, but that's a very interesting. So I think there's a lot going on. I think Trump knows a lot. I think he knows the occult. I do believe. I know he studied the Kabbalah.
Yeah.
So that he's admitted to that, but he's also knows really complex things that a lot of non-occultists don't know about. They know about Masonry, but he knows about the Tesseract, and he has these symbols of the box within the box, which symbolizes a lot. It's really about controlling other people, and that's why they would never divulge it, because it has a negative connotation. Like, on my relationship with you, I'm going to control you, and I think that plays out in Trump's relationship with people. They're literally under him, and they always have to praise him. Oh, Donald Trump has done this. So I think that he's probably a Mason, and weird stuff in his house too. This kind of not Christian things, like pictures of Apollo and his references, the Golden One, and this weird statue of him shooting down in Gaza. So you see this kind of self-deification and narcissism. But so I think a lot's going on. I really don't know. He came in as a peacemaker president. He said he'd stop the war in Iraq day one, and we're almost at 2.5 months in now, and that hasn't stopped. And he's bombing Yemen and threatening Iran, which doesn't look good. So, and he's allowing Netanyahu to murder more innocent people in Gaza. So, the facts are a lot different than what people expected. Like, it's genocide. They're genocide.
Well, you can look back at the series of events, especially since World War II, assassination of JFK, 9/11, these stepping stone events where these parasites in charge not only gain more power and control, but they steer the consciousness of the people in different directions, either left or right to the extremes, by creating these high impact events and these cultural things that make society buck either left or right, until we are in the situation we're in right now. And it seems like they have us all right where they want us.
I agree. I think we're in a very precarious situation. I think the JFK event, like some people like Ben Shapiro, who I don't respect at all, there's nothing out of his mouth that I take seriously.
Right.
I don't think anybody serious person with a brain would consider what he says meaningful. But he recently said, why does JFK matter? And I actually think that JFK is just like 9/11. Yeah. This is something we and Americans' relationship to the state is that they can kill and overthrow you, and that's possible. And he was trying to kind of have détente with the Soviet Union. He had that famous speech in American University. We are all mortal. We're all human. Whatever his flaws were, his personal flaws. But he actually repeated peace like 50 times, and really wanted to kind of roll back and disarm and not have nuclear bombs. What's crazy about that? That makes sense. And then you have today kind of the same thing with Trump being resisted against on this war that has killed millions of people. Like, there's like 1 million dead Ukrainians, 500,000 injured. Russians are being invaded, like we're invading Russia. So we're almost in the same environment. And then they try to kill Trump, right? So we're almost in the same environment that it was 60 years ago. So JFK, the JFK coup, JFK's message of peace could not be more relevant right now. Could not be. And Americans, I think we're in a kind of a bubble where we don't perceive the enormity of what's going on. We're really in a World War III. Like, there's military going into that border war that are coming to Russia. So Russia's getting people from like Mongolia and other, like literally North America, Korea, and Africa. And then the U.S. and its proxies and Europe and mercenaries from all over the world, from literally Colombia, like they are fighting this global war, and people are brain dead about it. And and Putin keeps repeating the word nuclear bomb over and over. So we're in a JFK era, and it couldn't be more relevant to get a real understanding. And I think that the disclosure is a good point for, we're off track, but it's a good point for the Trump administration to at least divulge these, almost like Wikipedia did, without redactions, and just let the autists and the JFK experts look through them and determine their relevance and meaning.
Yeah, I agree, man. Well, we got about 10, 15 minutes left.
Okay.
Is there anything else that we should get to within the presentation within that time?
I think we can just scroll through. I think it's interesting that the kind of notion of the Maltese Falcon has come into the common culture because the what Juan Carlos the First wanted for the giving of the islands to the Maltese, the Knights of Malta, was one Maltese Falcon. So you see that symbolized here. There's a picture of it, and so that concept of a Maltese Falcon transferred over to this famous movie and book that starred Humphrey Bogart, which people should check out. But the central thing about the thing is the Maltese Falcon. And I mentioned earlier about Seymour Hersh. I was trying to remember his name, but he's talking about the Knights of Malta. This is about the Iraq War. There's Eric Prince talking about the Knight of Malta tradition. So there's also lists of all these other people who were in there. And this guy, if you go down this group, it's called Institute for Human Dignity. This guy is a Knight of Malta, and he's making the sign of I'm initiated. If you go down like one more, not one more. Oh, sorry, one more. That's the guy right there. Forgot his name. He's the associate of Bannon. So Bannon knows this dude whose name is like Burke. His name is Burke, but he's not in Malta. So you see kind of Malta. I see Bannon on social media all the time. And so then if you go down one more, people might see her face. They should look familiar. Her name's Alina Haba, and she's her dad. If you scroll down one more, her dad is a huge Knight of Malta. That's him. And they're a different kind of Catholic. They're part of the Catholic tradition. They're known as like really old Catholics from the Middle East. And there is Alina Haba with what's her face? I forgot the old spokesperson for Trump.
Would you say that the Catholic Church is probably one of the most powerful organizations on the planet?
No question. If not because it's transnational, I would say it's almost like one of the most, if not the most powerful. I would say maybe the King of England is one of the real secret powers because he really owns all the land of the Commonwealth and influences so many things through his kind of like own aristocracy. And the King, I think the Pope too is really one of the most powerful people.
Yeah.
And then I don't know if there's any other rivals. Maybe the head of China just because of numbers and power. But like they're in the top 10. There's no question about it. That's Alina Haba's dad. His name is Saad F. Haba. And you can see it on their website. Like you can just go check it out. There's Alina Haba with our current FBI head, Kash Patel. So like these people are networked. And so there's the head of Knight of Malta, Eric Prince, with the sub leader of the FBI now, Dan Bongino. So these are really important people. Eric Prince is on this new Sean Ryan. Talk about infiltration of the alternate media. This guy came out of nowhere too. Like what the
We've got
you
a
gotta
lot
wonder.
of those people that come out of nowhere and the algorithm just blows them up to a viral state.
It's amazing. Yeah. So something's going on. I've done shows on Ian Carroll. He has a lot of friends who are very powerful. Like you go, okay,
man.
Well, this makes sense.
I was just thinking of him.
So, anyway, the Knights of the Holy Sepulchre is like another rival organization. You'll see that here. This is Edwin Fulner. I mentioned him earlier. This guy, Cardinal Dolan, is a Knight of Malta. He also, if you see those kind of things where like Trump's insulting Hillary Clinton or whatever, saying you should be in jail. This guy's on the stand too. This guy Dolan, right here, yeah. Oliver North, Knight of Malta. Hegseth, definitely Knight of Malta adjacent. This Christian symbol on his chest is that Knight of the Holy Sepulchre, Knight of Jerusalem tattoo. So this guy is either initiated, he's part of this Crusader Christian mentality. There's no question about it. That's John Roberts, head of the Supreme Court. This is Alan West, kind of another kind of right-wing thought leader, I guess. There's the King of Jerusalem tattoo. You'll see that if you scroll down a little bit more. And then there's James Earl Carter. When he passed away, this was his missive. This is recent, right? So he passed away in December. He had this infamous memorial in D.C. and if you look at his tomb or his casket, it was on top of this symbol. So I think he really saw himself as kind of a crusader.
I forget who was it who said symbolism will be their downfall, but it does seem like they like to flaunt their occult symbols everywhere and through their institutions and through the media and everything. It's like they're showing off their organizations and who they're involved with in certain ways, but it also gives them away, it seems.
I agree. So I think they like their tats. Like, this is a secretive organization, but like once you kind of look into it, you'll see things. If you scroll down, this is 900-year history of the Knight of Malta in Ireland. So it's been there for 100 years, like 900 years. Bilderberg Group. There's a connection to Teal to the Isle of Malta. He wants his Maltese citizenship. And Teal is best friends with Eric Prince. And a lot of the stuff that they're putting together through Palantir overlaps with Prince and these other characters. So, like, this Knights of Malta is integrated into our culture and society. There's just absolutely no question about it. Cambridge Analytica. I know we're kind of pressed for time. Zuckerberg. If you scroll down a little bit more, you see kind of some of these famous people. There's Teal, wants Maltese citizenship. There's Prince, advising from the shadows. This is Douglas Fairbanks Jr., Knight of Malta. He's got all his honorary stuff. But they have these balls in Palm Beach. That's where Trump's Mar-a-Lago is. So all these guys go to these balls and dance. And that's him with his cape and his obvious Maltese cross, right? It's an interesting picture. The next one, there he is, Knight of Malta with Nancy Reagan and the beautiful Kelly. What's her, Grace Kelly? Grace Monaco or whatever her name is. So Fairbanks, there's the future king, Prince of Wales, St. John of Jerusalem giving a speech, though he was supposed to be king. He was passed over because of Nazi sympathies, supposedly. Rose Kennedy and William Baum at the Knights of Malta Ball in Palm Beach. They have a priory in downtown the city of London, like I mentioned earlier. You can go to the Museum of the Order of St. John. And you see all the people and all this stuff. And they're on the Via Dolorosa in Jerusalem. I have an announcement down there of Trump calling Alina Habba will join my White House team as counselor to the president. He literally has a counselor to the president whose dad is like a ranked member of the Knight of Malta. I'll just go down one more. That's it. So her unwavering loyalty. That's December 8th, 2024. So this is recent, you know. John Leo is a Knight of Malta. He's very much involved in getting conservative judges on the bench. He's devout Roman Catholic. And you see kind of the international thing. Grand Master, President Kibaki, Sovereign Order, Uhuru United to the Order of St. John. If you go to the other set of slides, I can just show one more thing, and that is Secretary of State Marco Rubio, a Catholic, at the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. You all just had it up right there. There he is.
Is it? Okay.
So this is recent. This is February 17th, 2025. So this is where it all goes back to, is this Church of Holy Sepulchre. Alina Habba, John Roberts at the inauguration. So Roberts, Knight of Malta, inaugurating Trump. So they're all around it, this guy. Like, Rothschild with his Knight of Malta cross on. Like, this is incredible stuff. You can see it down there if you scroll down a little bit more.
Yeah, it's obviously in all levels of our upper echelon. Like we were saying earlier, it's difficult to discern these groups. They seem to have certain aligning interests and interwoven agendas, but there also seems to be some varying differences in cooperation, but it's almost impossible to understand because we're not in the club.
I'm definitely not. So one of the other things is, like, you want to talk about dark magic. One of the darkest people to ever live, or maybe in the darkest in the 20th century, confirmed necrophiliac Jimmy Savile is a Knight of Malta. Yeah. And if you go down one, it's a pretty shot. If you know how dark Jimmy Savile is, if you go up to that picture, here he is with the Pope, with his Maltese cross. If you zoom in there, I don't know if you can, he's wearing his Maltese cross.
Oh, there it is.
And he's just chumming it up with the Pope. Pope John II or something, I think. And I think that even that shirt, if it was colorized, it would be white on red, right? I don't have. If somebody has a colored picture of that,
So
for me, that's remarkable. This
disgusting
guy
things
was
that are coming about this dude. It's crazy.
Savile.
Yeah.
Savile is so crazy. It's like the story of Savile isn't even believable. Like child rape, necrophilia, black magic. He's making the sign of like, I'm initiated. Like so many pictures, and he's totally associated with all kinds of famous people, including King Charles III.
Yeah. It has to be a cover for something much darker. This has no relation to what I would understand as Christian ideologies. It all seems like Luciferianism.
I don't think any group is really static. So I think that like allegiances and fealty to the ideals wave and fall, just like the Templars. They may have been a Christian group, but like it's seemingly at the end, like they were kind of a black magic group is the allegation. So and I think that I think like if you watch like these powerful people, they're always trying to blackmail each other, infiltrate each other's groups, have influence operations. And I think my Knights of Malta is no different. So somebody like Savile's like, I got to get into the Knights of Malta and find people I can put a lever on. Like and I think that that's standard. It may not happen to like people like us or whatever, or being like people who don't have political or financial power, but I think that's a constant in world history is like always trying to blackmail people or get dirt on people and manipulate them. I think that these infiltrations or something like that, that's what my guess is.
Yeah, any beneficial organization or movement is quickly infiltrated and co-opted and taken over so that whatever the original purpose is completely diverted.
100% agree. One example, I remember O'Keefe, he's doing all that good work as an investigative journalist, and all of a sudden it just imploded and blew up. And then they sued him like it was like an operation. And he had to kind of redo it. I forgot what his operation was. But watching that happen in real time, I'm like, somebody targeted him and somebody infiltrated and blew up that whole thing up.
Yeah. Man, we'll definitely have to do a part 2 of this. There is much more we can get to. William, thank you so much for this. This is great information. Is there anything else that you'd like to mention that we haven't covered before we close out?
No, but it overlaps with Pilgrims. I think we should do a Pilgrims next time. But thanks for the invite back, and I'm happy to be here and check out my podcast.
Definitely. One more time before you go, just remind everybody what's the best way they can find it.
My podcast is William Ramsey Investigates, and you can find me on my website if you want to send me anything or that colorized picture of Savile, send it to me. And William Ramsey Investigates at protonmail.com or my website. But thanks again, Chris. Great to be with you.
Thank you, sir. I'll have those links in the description. Until next time, everyone, have a wonderful evening. We'll talk again tomorrow. See y'all then.